All right, today at the US Embassy, I'm joined by Minister Counselor George Sibley. George looks after economic, environment, science, and tech affairs. I hope I got that right, George.
That's right, yep.
And we're here to talk about what's happening in the presidential race. Although we're here in New Delhi, we're glued in to the debate right now. We're watching it together. George, this is neck and neck, right? And this is something a lot of people didn't expect.
Right.
Most polls predicted, well, a win for Hillary Clinton,
right,
and an out-and-out win for her. This is neck and neck. In fact,
right,
as we speak right now, Donald Trump is in the lead. George, what kind of an impact so considering it's 50-50, I'm going to ask you for both scenarios,
right,
what kind of an impact do you think a Trump presidency would have on India-US relations, especially the portfolios that you look after,
right,
and then, of course, a Clinton presidency as well?
Okay, so I'm sorry, Aayush, I'm not going to go there. That's still too hypothetical. It's still up in the air. But what I will say, which in a sense does answer your question, is that in a very polarized,
right,
very divided political environment in the US,
right,
one area in which there is a consensus among very few is the importance and the value of the US-India relationship.
Right.
So I think regardless of the outcome of the presidential election, the relations between US and India will remain strong.
Right.
It will remain an important partnership, a valued partnership, and one that I certainly hope will continue to go from strength to strength.
I know, because it's interesting, right, George? Because at the end of the day, at least from just judging from what we heard from the electoral campaigns, which were, everyone was glued in all over the world and everyone seemed to have a view on it. But even just going on facts, a topic like climate change, Hillary Clinton had a particular policy towards climate change, but Donald Trump seemed to suggest it was all China, China, China. Considering we're in Delhi, which is very polluted nowadays, do you think that these things could change depending on the president that we do get in the United States?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that in a campaign, you have a lot of rhetoric. You're trying to energize your supporters. Once you are in the office and actually governing, it's very likely that some of the more extreme positions that are taken by both sides will be tempered. This is quite normal in governing. I myself had that experience as a consul general in Calcutta,
right,
when they had a communist government. And we worked very well with that communist government, as surprising as that may sound. So I think it remains to be seen, of course. We don't know the outcome of the election yet. But I think regardless of who wins, there will be a certain amount of continuity that will be perhaps not as extreme as may have been in the course of the heat of the campaign.
Right, another. So immigration was one issue, but since you do look at technology and trade as well, in terms of bilateral trade, where you're hoping for continuity, and that's a good space to be in.
Right.
But in terms of free trade globally, because this has ramifications globally, do you think that there could be a significant impact with either candidate in office?
I think that remains to be seen. I mean, certainly both candidates on the campaign trail expressed concerns about the Trans-Pacific partnership.
Right.
So the question about whether we move forward with that or not, I think, is something that will be an open question, remains to be seen. But there will certainly be differences. I'm not about to pretend to you that there won't be differences.
Absolutely.
But I think the ability right now, when there isn't even a decision in the election, to forecast the differences is really wild speculation. I prefer not to go there.
Fair enough, George. But just as a voter now, I'm going to make you don your voter hat. And just watching all of these, electoral debates, is it something, you've seen a lot of elections come and go around the world.
I've seen the one here.
The one here as well. And you saw the rhetoric attached to that as well. And you've seen this one as well. For us, we've seen this as largely a personality-driven election. Some very vitriolic campaigns running all over the place. Is this something that stands out for you from your experience? Or is this just fairly normal for a presidential election?
Well, I think having a contentious battle for a cherished prize is normal. It's to be expected. And certainly in 2014, we saw some of that as well here in India. There are elements that are quite new. I mean, you have the first woman candidate for president in our history.
Right.
You have a candidate who has very little government background. That's unusual as well. So yeah, there are, in every election, there will be elements that are new, and there certainly are some in this election too.
Interesting. Thanks so much for joining us, George. Guys, stay tuned to BloombergQuint. We're going to be here from the US Embassy getting you all the updates.